Welcome to We Can Be,
the podcast of the Heinz Endowments,
where we work to build
an exemplary,
sustainable region
where everyone
prospers
and belongs.
Welcome to We Can Be. I'm your host, Chris DeCardy. This season, we're expanding our format. After my conversation with today's guest, I'm going to bring in one of our experts from the Heinz Endowments to talk further about the conversation, its implications for our region, and beyond. Let's get into it. Our guest today is a successful working artist and educator, as well as a thoughtful community advocate committed to public art, creative spaces, and workforce development. Tim Kaulen is the founder and executive director of Industrial Arts Workshop. Industrial Arts Workshop began a decade ago as a mobile sculpture program that brought together high school students to learn safe welding and metal fabrication techniques, as well as artistic process, community engagement, and team building. Now with a permanent home in Pittsburgh's Hazelwood community, Industrial Arts Workshop has served over 600 students, with many going on to careers in both the arts and the welding industry. Early in his career, Tim's creation of a 25-foot inflatable piece made from recycled billboard segments was featured at the Burning Man Festival and exhibited in Brooklyn and Pittsburgh. And his Dino Geese painting on the 10th Street Bridge on Pittsburgh's South Side has gained mythological status, inspiring joy and the occasional tattoo by fans over the years. We'll talk about all of that, as well as the large-scale sculptures he and his students have created that are bringing the region's industrial past into the future in a beautiful and meaningful way. Tim Kaulen, welcome to We Can Be. You have this decades-long commitment to the power of public art in our community. And for a region like ours, in this transition from the industrial to the post-industrial age, which is such a theme for you, what do you see as the importance of public art?
The value of public art is the space to ask questions and to imagine answers. And I think the best public art, and certainly we're lucky in Pittsburgh to have great examples, promotes questions and conversations that the artist doesn't need to be there for or can't even imagine. What's great for me is to see young people, especially, engage with public art and to see their curiosity and their imaginations change in the moment. So public art is about curiosity, questions, imagination, and wonder. The vibrancy of the arts community in Pittsburgh over the last few decades, and especially the community that I've been lucky to be a part of, has helped Pittsburgh in the space of time in transition and change to give it context and identity and a place of home, a place where people look to feel attached and feel a sense of belonging. So I feel that our arts community delivers on all of those fronts, and I'm lucky to play my part.
The public space about art and expression that is so much of a sort of outsider kind of catalyst into communities. You have people who are artists that do unsanctioned works, and there's so much that then becomes part of community where you've got major corporations or the government that is sanctioning and commissioning. Tell me a part of your story on that progression.
You know, from an early standpoint, I was really fortunate to go to the Art Institute of Pittsburgh and study under a really dynamic painter named Henry Kerner, who is a world-renowned artist. But he had a particular drawing assignment that I use still, and it really helped to shape my relationship with the city and sense of being a part of something bigger, where we made drawings in a conventional studio life drawing class, and Henry would send the entire class out to a specific destination to sketch a very specific background. Now, he was a really strong personality and a difficult teacher to be with because of his personality, but nonetheless, the goal was to incorporate the figure drawing into the landscape that he prescribed. And there were unspoken rules that only he knew. So it made for the critiques to be really dynamic and fueled with a lot of different language that made students either leap to their highest aspirations or crumble in fear. So I was one of the lucky ones that felt charged by that assignment, and only later in my art making did I realize that I was actually still doing Henry Kerner's assignment, where I was identifying with venues that spoke to me for various reasons of neglect or disservice or dysfunction, or a call to me that said this space requires attention or beautification, I guess I would say now, whether it was known or not known.
There's an online push to save 4 geese that have called the top of the 10th Street Bridge home for 25 years. The geese were painted atop the outbound side of the bridge back in 1993. The bridge has been undergoing renovations since last summer. It's going to be painted soon, and local artist Tim Kaulen, who painted the geese, is now worried that they're going to be painted over. He's now started an online petition that he hopes to present to the city to save his artwork.
They represent a period of Pittsburgh's history where we and the city of Pittsburgh were searching for a new identity, and I feel they've come to represent that spirit and the vitality of our arts community, and they speak to people.
It's so interesting because I think people in Pittsburgh both know and don't know your work. It is in so many different places, Carey Furnaces, other parts around town, Hazelwood. One of the ones, and especially because of recent advocacy, is the 10th Street Bridge and the dino geese. I wonder if you could tell the story, first of all, about why did you do it, and why was it important to protect it when the bridge was being refurbished?
The arts community and myself have been at our best where venues and exhibitions are created out of sheer will and identification of need and interests. And I began to create paintings in public on neglected spaces. So I sort of established a bit of a code for myself that was hoping to not be disrespectful of public and private property, to not get into trouble, but still to have that response and to share my work with my peers and my community. So there was this, for me, an agency to place artwork where it was not expected and to try to draw attention to environments and buildings that needed a little extra nudge. So Mayor Peduto nicknamed them dino geese. As I've come to understand, they look more like dinosaurs to most people. My grandfather, Joe, made a series of decoys in his yard, probably had intentions of shooting geese. His original geese, by design, were really incredible shapes, and they were super crude, wonderful shapes that just sort of, as an art student, graphic design student, it sort of blew my mind. I was like, here's this guy expressing himself in this way that's really powerful, with an aesthetic that is super rich. And I adopted that shape and cast a shadow of that shape, and then made a template, and it became my stencil. So I would go to demolition sites and draw on the buildings as they were being taken down, and then ultimately abandon buildings in the neighborhoods that I lived in. So the original geese were actually stenciled onto structures. I prefaced my art making as having respect for public and private property, and I still do believe in that. However, I took the risks at one point to draw on the bridge that's owned by Allegheny County. And over the years, I, of course, enjoyed my artwork being visible from such a wonderful perspective. Of course, I was not taking credit for the artwork at that time. It was still an unknown kind of entity experiment. So after multiple repaintings of the structure, I could tell that they were going to take the top pieces of the bridge and repaint them. So I started a petition to understand if there was public value in the artwork. And little did I know that they were important. So after collecting the survey data of about 1,000 signatures and a lot of testimony, I presented that to Allegheny County and Executive Rich Fitzgerald and his staff as a reason to recognize the paintings as public art. I realized it was a long shot through this entire process, but nonetheless, the members of leadership of Allegheny County invited me to appeal in person.
The meeting will come to order.
An ordinance authorizing Tim Kaulen, artist, to replace an existing public art display located on the north face of the south tower of the South 10th Street Philip Murray Bridge after the bridge repainting by the county's contractor is completed.
The story that I like is that as they went around the room for roll call on the vote to restore the geese on the bridge, the first two council members voted no, so it went no, no.
We're spending $25 million of the county taxpayers' money. I find it difficult to support basically a graffiti artist to go up and repaint something into perpetuity here. So for that reason, I'm going to be a no as well.
Part of the appeal that I felt turned the tables in the decision-making was actually the testimony of young people that grew up with the geese in their view, where it reflected a sense of wonder and imagination in young people that they thought their hometown was really special, and they would ask themselves questions and their parents questions like, where do these things come from and what do they mean, and all of the great things that start conversations around public art.
Although I was not real familiar with the geese or the dinosaurs, as some of the people call it, I found out a lot of people are, including my own daughter. She remembers when she was a kid and saying, oh, the dinosaur bridge, I remember always going over. And she still looks for them when she's in town now because she lives in New York. And talking to other people, it does bring smiles to some people's faces. Now it is an iconic thing of that bridge, so I will be a yes vote.
On the motion to approve, Mr. Baker.
Yes.
Mr. Katina.
Yes.
Mr. Fatulis.
Yes.
Ms. Kirk.
Yes.
From that
Mr.
point,
Klein.
all of the votes were in favor of restoring the paintings. So it was really that one person's perspective as the value of public art and what it means to their sense of home and of an identity that they carried with them as a young person. So in many ways, it was the voice of our youth in Pittsburgh that helped to validate the value of the artworks in this appeal process.
Ayes 12, noes 2. The bill passes.
Such a great story. And young people and youth is a theme that you've already hit on at least 3 times. You've talked about the purpose and why you believe public art is important, and because it draws a thread from history for young people to see their role and their place in the future. You have been a practitioner, an advocate, an organizer, a teacher with Industrial Arts Workshop. What happens at Industrial Arts Workshop, and what do you hope that it is doing for the teachers and the students who are engaged in our community?
What I hope for Industrial Arts Workshop is to continue to support our young people in Pittsburgh and beyond with creating positive experiences that incorporate both the trades applications and creative, expressive art making. To the young person, it creates a sense of discovery and learning that is open and accessible when we combine arts and trades learning together. What I have found that if we set up exciting parameters and assignments for ourselves and our students, that amazing things happen through a creative process, and the real world being an occupation, but also if that occupation and marketable skills begins to create other things such as independence and confidence and mobility in the young person, should they so choose to maintain a creative, expressive part of their lives, they can do it with an affordable lifestyle that they are in control of.
If I were a young person walking into Industrial Arts Workshop, what do I see and what do I get to do? What is that training in? What does it look like? What are the assignments?
Any student that walks into IAW, the first thing that they see is in welding a sometimes intimidating process that relies on their ability to be trusted and responsible with some powerful equipment. What I like about Industrial Arts Workshop particularly is that we have a team of individuals, of artists and teachers who are very determined in creating a welcoming, safe, and supportive space where the expressive part intersects with the technical training and the technical development part. I find to be the language in which we deliver small individual assignments that turn into group assignments that teach us other things around mutual respect and supporting each other and developing ideas together, much in the ways that my friends and I did years ago in developing artwork.
My name's Anthony Minifield. I'm 15 and I'm from Hazelwood. It makes me feel really excited and proud. I want to work on cars. It'll help a lot with that, the welding skills. They have grown in patience when welding. You're not supposed to go too fast, not supposed to go too slow.
I am Dominic, I am 15 and I'm from Greenfield. I think I've grown a bit more responsible dealing with more dangerous tools and equipment, so you have to feed into the idea that you're a trustworthy person and that you can keep using this equipment.
My name is Alan Carter. I'm from North Versailles and I'm 15. When I originally started, I was really nervous about meeting other people. Here, it's I feel accepted. It's pretty cool. I feel like IAW is important because first it helped me to become the person that I am right now. And I think it's really cool that Mr. Tim and everyone else set this up. It makes me feel I actually have choices and no matter, you know what I mean? I feel kind of free.
Is there a particular story of a student who has come through and where they are now or how they've stayed connected to you that stands out that you could share?
What's really great about the work that we do at IAW is being in proximity of young people, and granted, the age of 14 to 18 is really significant in a young person's growth, and to just be a part of it in a small way is really obvious. And when things are changing in a young person in a positive way and they're excited and showing new levels of confidence and excitement about themselves and their work and their peers, you can't help but feel connected and a part of their growth. One of the unexpected outcomes of our work at IAW has been that not only do some students want to be tradespeople or want to develop a creative path as an artist or in the creative fields, is that some students want to be teachers or helpers in the room. We have two young people, Chaslin and Andrew. They were original students from our pilot program called Mobile Sculpture Workshop. Those were early days of our experimenting with public art, welding instruction, and youth engagement without a building. Chaslin and Andrew are two of those 50 kids who have stayed with us, and I'm grateful for their time and their abilities as they've grown to become nearly full-time employees. They're very responsible, and they're running programs. There's a young man in our program right now. His name is Adam. He attended only our after-school welding workshops that happened during the school year. Adam has been working with us this summer, and he's an incredible teacher, and He became certified in welding the first time that we offered a weld cert test, and he's jumped in to be a teacher with our mobile welding workshop, which we now have a utility truck that drives to high school parking lots to teach welding and career awareness. Adam has jumped in and taught the most difficult forms of welding, which is stick welding, to other young people on the spot. So I can't say enough for how exciting it is to see youth want to be of service and are actually good at teaching.
Those are great stories. You've also, in telling those stories, told a bit about the progression of how this effort has evolved, starting from a mobile unit to now being anchored in Hazelwood. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that change.
We love being in Hazelwood. Our origin story began pre-development at Mill 19. My artist group at the time and I were really fortunate to have a sculpture studio in Mill 19 prior to the development of Hazelwood Green, where we were provided studio space to create public art. So it was through those initial 10 years in creation of a public art piece did I begin to realize a few really important lessons. One, Hazelwood is an amazing community that is ready and interested for interesting things, including public art. Two, that youth can be an incredible part of the process of making public art and community engagement. And three, that we can be teaching ourselves marketable skills through the creation of new artworks. So once the development at Hazelwood Green began to occur out of a necessity to continue our programming, we developed the Mobile Sculpture Workshop since we did not have a permanent space. The Mobile Sculpture Workshop began out of a necessity to engage youth, make public art, and teach welding. And my friends and I, with the absence of a studio space, began to make and teach at public events on the weekends as volunteers. The order of the day for Mobile Sculpture Workshop would be to load up our pickup trucks and trailers with welding equipment, scrap metal, show up at an arts festival or a music festival, set up our tents like a normal vendor, and then invite the high school kids to weld in public. We did that for 5 years with a few successful public art projects. And it was through those 5 years of testing weld training in public with artists and teenagers did we really understand that, yes, young people like to do amazing things. They like to work with their hands. They like to learn new techniques and tools. So I continue to work closely with the Hazelwood Initiative that are still an incredible partner for us and other businesses and residents in the community. Our friendships continued to grow there until I found a building that would be suitable for the development of a year-round facility. And luckily, Hazelwood Initiative supported in the purchase of that building with a terrific lease and an option to purchase, which I'm at that crossroads as well.
Tell me a little bit more about connectivity with the Hazelwood community. You've done projects with the community. Maybe describe one or two of those.
During our first year of the Mobile Sculpture Workshop, we worked with students in Hazelwood to produce a bird sculpture. The very first sculpture that was created is still in front of the elementary school, the Propel Elementary School, as sort of a mascot. There's a company on Hazelwood called Floriated Interpretations, where our youth created some flowers as part of the decor for their business. We recently, through our summer welding boot camp in 2023, created a 3D type mural called The Braids of Hope at Tecumseh Street, which was a terrific project. So as a young business and a young artist to be welcomed into a community and supported with real projects just demonstrates that those relationships are pure and need to be supported.
Where would you love to see this go next? How to continue to extend or expand the opportunity for young people to engage?
Currently, within the space in Hazelwood, we operate under one roof with 5,000 square feet. We are really maxed for time, energy, and talent with our core programs. We would love to expand into the building next door, and part of our agreement with Hazelwood Initiative is to purchase our building and the little building adjacent to us. So there is a 2-year plan to expand physically with the facility. Our new mobile welding unit is now ready to do outreach in schools during the school day. There's a huge opportunity there for us, not just to engage with youth, but to engage with decision makers and administrators to understand that youth have many different styles of learning, and that oftentimes out of the classroom can be a leverage point to a student's success. There are a couple other ways where we are also expanding, where we are developing partnerships with local schools to bring students into IAW during the school day and run daylight programming. You know, for me, the next few years are really important. Luckily, we are continuing to grow our partnerships. Certainly, the foundation community of Pittsburgh has been the largest level of support in our operations, but as we are now engaging with some companies and corporations to broaden our reach and our pool of support, it is my hope that through grassroots organizations like IAW, we can demonstrate to industry and industry partners that there are opportunities for those companies and businesses to support small organizations to the success of young people.
So as you continue to advocate and pioneer and expand this model of creativity-centered workforce development, education, what do you hope the next generation of advocates and practitioners in this field can learn from what you and others have been building, and where do you hope they can take it next?
I think what's really important in identifying the needs of the next generation, it's too easy to place the burden of interest at the feet of youth to say, why are you not willing to work hard, and why are you only on technology? I think it's really easy for my generation and the ones before us to leave that at the feet of youth as if it's up to them to understand how to navigate. I think the bigger question for the older generation and still the decision makers is to understand that we have forgotten how to nurture and support youth. And although the rules and the codes have changed, it doesn't release us of the responsibility to play that role. And from a community standpoint, I think it's become even more clear that small organizations play a significant role in the development of the next generation. It can't be only parents who are often working multiple jobs to support a young person. It can't only be a school. It has to be all of us together with a concerted effort to lift each other up, including the kids. So, you know, for me, it starts with understanding what our roles are and what we can do in the margins of our day-to-day to address the needs of our youth and ask the question, what are the needs? They're different than they used to be. They're wildly different.
What is your message to the other key institutions? What's your message to the corporations and to the government leaders and the philanthropic leaders and the nonprofit leaders about what to pay attention to in this moment?
I'm really fortunate in the work that we do to be able to recognize need on multiple levels. It's the need and interests of our youth in this generation, which is a dynamic of its own. It is not charted and is not clear. There's also the need from employers, which I hope to develop broader relationships with the corporate community, especially industry partners who are struggling and challenged to find the next wave of talent. That gap between this generation's needs and the accessibility to meaningful work at the level of business and corporation is widening every day that we're not asking the right questions of how to engage youth. But I would say that workforce development is not just solved by training young talent. It's solved by reinventing accessibility and understanding of what work and trades and support look like in a working environment. Unless the bigger entities, our business partners and corporations, are able to want to change, to shift their ways of working to be more accessible for this generation, they're going to miss any next wave of opportunity, of talent and interest and determined young people. I believe that workforce development is not in just the training of young talent. It's the training of old institutional models of marketing and accessibility and workforce training in the job. Like, if we are not able to teach people the work that we need them to do, they're probably not going to discover it or even know that it's an opportunity on their own.
So as we wrap up, the name of our podcast is We Can Be. We like to end each episode with this question: what do you think we, as a community, as a region, as a country, as a world, can be?
I believe that we all, regardless of our walk in life, can be positive influences for our youth. And unless we really try to identify and ask ourselves that question as how to be a supportive human, I feel that we're just going to continue to overwhelm ourselves with things that we can't control.
Now I'm going to bring in Mac Howison, who is our senior program officer in our arts and culture program at the Endowments. Mac, you've been in this community a long time, and you actually have personal and professional experience with outsider art and insider art. And I wonder what your perspective is about art, and especially outsider art, not of the system, and its important role in bringing community together.
The first thing that comes to mind when I think about outsider art is it's really everyone's art. You know, that comes from the history of the inside of art really being kept in the palace, kept in the church, the tradition of bigger institutions or people who hold wealth and power commissioning the work. That's the inside. And so then the outside is really everybody else's practice of art, which is the long human history of art. So that tradition is really what we today call outsider art, but it's actually the common art. It's what both attracts us and also makes it seem like that's the place where I can participate. I think about it as everyone's art.
It is the small d democratic aspect of coming from somebody's passion and the passion to be able to express and to connect that drives it. And what is interesting to me is that expression sometimes is in places that it is not welcome, it is not expected. There is a tension then in community about where art is exhibited, how it shows up. One person's art is another person's graffiti or defacement, and that can change over time. What does that mean as a grant maker? How do you think about that from the role of a philanthropy as an institution into this ecosystem?
To me, it's really mostly about what is sanctioned. And I think as a grant maker or as anyone who is kind of assisting a community, whether that's a community of artists or a community of people interested in bringing art, the challenge, but the excitement of it, I think, is how to take something that might have existed naturally in an unsanctioned way. It's really coming from the artist. It's a reaction to space or to place or to a personal vision or a narrative, and how to help that artist translate something that was unsanctioned into something that has a little bit more backing. Tim's story about how the geese dinosaurs on the 10th Street Bridge was most certainly unsanctioned, but then it became a part of some kind of collective memory.
Yeah.
And actually a young person lifting it up is like, hey, this means something to me for the following reasons, when that person might have had no connection to the artist or even understood why it was there in the first place, prompted public officials to say, I think we can actually sanction this. Let's figure out a way.
Yeah.
It's that accumulation that takes something from being unsanctioned to then kind of legitimizing it for a little push in the direction of sanctioning it.
That is community engagement, is people being in community wrestling with what does that mean and what's important to us. And that is so important for a vibrant community that cares about its place. I can't help but think about another place where one of Tim's pieces is so prominently featured is at Carey Furnaces. And it's fascinating because if you think about our legacy here, it is so important for us to own and recognize and celebrate the people and the values and characteristics that made this region phenomenal in the last century, and at the same way, be able to bring that through to where we are in this moment. The Carey Furnaces are this wonderful piece of both the legacy of the steel industry and then that rebirth and discovery and transformation. So I'm curious about that aspect, the power of the arts to lead through what is often necessary rebirth and transformation in community. How or where do you see that in our region?
Using the word rebirth, Chris, is not an exaggeration too in terms of the artistic tradition, like the people's art, everyday art, everyone's art in folk communities, indigenous communities going way back. That art-making process often marked passages, transitions, major life events, and the same thing can be done in Pittsburgh today and was done and is still being done by artists and collectives like those that Tim is a part of. Those are really monuments. If you think about it, the steel making industry is fundamentally a past industry, but Carey it's an antique furnace too. It was one of the originals.
Yeah, right.
That was built way back in 1884. It was one of Carnegie's original mills and blast furnaces. It operated all the way until 1982, which really represents a pivotal year in the decline of the steel industry in the region. And it is standing in and of itself as a monument to that industry. Nested within it are unsanctioned art projects, including the famous Carey Deer that Tim and a group of collaborators worked on in order to also memorialize the decline of that industry and the rise, essentially, in wildlife that had overtaken the site. We're all very familiar now with the amount of deer that are in western Pennsylvania cities. Both of those represent that intersection in a lot of ways of what do we make with our hands, that somebody's got to make these things. And maybe my grandfather made some stuff before us, and maybe my college-age friends and I made something that we can still see today. And then what do we pass on to young people so that they can make the thing that we're all seeing for tomorrow?
We are a long-standing institution in this region. We support institutions that have been here a long time. I'm interested what his line sparked in you about retraining old institutions like ours for this moment.
It's almost taken for granted. We know that we're going to need to have adaptive newcomers to this field and that we're going to need to adapt in order to be successful, to thrive. It's especially iterative in the corporate and industry world too, which I continue to find fascinating as the application for the arts. Whether you choose to go on to play violin, whether you choose to go on to be a large-scale, unsanctioned outdoor sculptor, you may find that in your next employment journey, those creative skills, those collaborative skills that you've learned, the ability to share credit for an idea and to generate then the next thing in conversation with community, your creative peers, and maybe Tim referred to it as parameters, like you've got some limitations here, let's work with them. That's really what institutional leaders want to see. And I think that in and of itself is a training from the inside out.
And I think one of the things you're leading to is institutions that have been established and have done things in a particular way successfully for a very long time are probably not the places that are going to demonstrate the innovation that needs to come in a moment where everything is up in the air and needs to work differently. And as society right now, we're at so many different inflection points around technology, around industry, around communication and how we engage, and fundamentally now around how we decide to govern ourselves. There are unique things about smaller organizations that could be uniquely more valuable in this time than ever before. And it shows in what he has now built into this program and into this way of caring deeply about young people and them finding their place in the future. Thanks for sharing your perspective. It's been fun to talk.
Thanks so much, Chris.